Well, a very, very good afternoon to everybody who has logged in to this exciting webinar that I get to moderate. I think that I must be the luckiest woman on the planet right now to be in the company of what I believe are legends amongst legends in the history of our country and in the history of jazz. So I'm going to welcome them and welcome you to all that are joining us live on the Facebook live stream. And so without further ado, I want to welcome our guests, and I will introduce myself to you after I introduce them. So I want to introduce Pete Rosser, George Werner, Yanni Fantonda, Billy Monama, and if you were in a live audience, I would say give them a round of applause because you don't know who you have in your company this afternoon. I certainly do. My students certainly do. So welcome all of you, and thank you so much for availing yourself to do this workshop with us on jazz education resources. So they don't even know who I am. So my name is Natalie Rangan. I'm a jazz vocalist and a composer, but I'm also very involved in the jazz education circuit right now and teaching. A lot of what you are making available has been an answer to prayers that we've had and sent out into the universe, God, and said, please make resources available. So what I find outstanding about all of you is that nobody's mandated you to do this. You are all musicians and accomplished musicians in your own right, and have taken this upon yourself to make these resources available to students, available to teachers, so that jazz education can be taken to the next level in our country and in the rest of the world, in fact, because South African jazz has certainly made a footprint in international spaces over the last 10 years at least, and even more than that. So Neil Gonzalez, who actually invited me to moderate this webinar, asked me to talk about my jazz artifact, or jazz effect, as we're calling it. And I thought, let me just talk about the one that I'm using right now as a teacher. So I teach the NSE syllabus and the CAP syllabus. So a lot of teachers are going to resonate with what I'm saying. And we found that, I don't know if any of you know, that jazz is actually included in the music syllabus in South Africa as a stream that students can do right from grade 10 to grade 12. So they get exposed to, so Yanni, they get exposed to your music, whether you know it or not. And my students learn about that, so they do. So the resource that you made available is actually extremely valuable to all of them. But something that I have been using is the Marianne Feenstra books that she compiled a few years ago. And she's actually put a whole lot of different styles of music together, including classical music, indigenous African music, and the jazz syllabus. And that for me has been an invaluable resource to start teaching jazz at a high school level. And in 5 years, I can, if I can boast a little bit, in 5 years from having 0 jazz students in our high school, we now have what in essence is a jazz big band. And the students come in not knowing a single thing about jazz. And it excites me as a jazz musician to be able to do this because, it's the music that we grew up with in so many different ways. And having access to this information now at a high school level for students is just mind-blowing because the potential of that further on is just enormous. So I'm not going to take much more time because I'm in the company of giants and you have much more to add value to this webinar than I do about the resources that you have in fact created. And the first person that I actually want to introduce is Pete Rosser. And he has been a freelance musician and composer, pianist, accordionist, and songwriter for over 30 years, and has also been an ABRSM examiner since 2000. Based in Wakefield, UK, welcome, Pete. He has published music and has assisted in the development of the ABRSM piano syllabus, which we use, incidentally, Pete, and is promoter of Wakefield Jazz in Yorkshire. He is currently working for Opera North, Northern School of Contemporary Dance and Leeds Grand Youth Theatre, as well as running a community choir and a jazz workshop. Welcome, Pete. I'm going to pass on the floor to you, as it were. And I would like you, just to talk about your jazz effect and particularly about the ABRSM jazz graded syllabus that you have available. So over to you, Pete.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm calling in from Wakefield in Yorkshire in the north of England. It's very nice to see you all. I did come to South Africa in the summer of 2019, which seems like an eon ago. I came and worked for 6 weeks, I think it was, traveling around, examining ABRSM exams. I'm not claiming to have contributed to making the things I'm going to talk about, because most of these books have been around for 20 years or so, the jazz syllabus of ABRSM. But I got involved with the ABRSM as an examiner, as a jazz musician, when they introduced this jazz syllabus just over 20 years ago, 22, 23 years ago. Look, for instance, there's a book.
Yeah.
Jazz Piano Pieces, Grade 5. I'm sure the ABRSM is a very respectable organization that's, been around for over 125 years, making music exams, examining music exams, mostly, in very straight classical contexts and gradually expanding further and further. But there aren't exams in the accordion, but almost every other instrument you can think of, and singing, there are exams, ABRSM exams. The jazz syllabus obviously was a whole new venture 25 years ago. And that's when I got involved, because they wanted jazz musicians to become examiners. And for me, it is a really, ABRS exams go up to grade 8. These jazz exams only go up to grade 5. So you can do grades 1 to 5. You can do piano, you can do flute, clarinet, trumpet, trombone. What's the other one? There's another instrument, isn't there? Saxophones.
Saxophone. Yeah.
I always imagine you could enter yourself for a jazz flute exam, but come in with a violin and no one would bat an eyelid because they wouldn't be able to. So, if you think, well, they haven't included my instruments, then just find one in the right key and sneak in. So there's a whole range of resources from which are at the level grade 1 to 5. Although I think doing grade 5 jazz piano is a lot more difficult than just doing a straight grade 5 exam, because the basis of everything is everything that you do in a jazz exam has to involve some improvisation. And though you've got your 3 pieces to play, but they've got a solo section which has got to be, I say it's got to be improvised, it's got to be performed, hasn't it? So you might practice your solo, and if you've practiced it for 6 months, it might not be improvised. But generally, as an examiner, you can hear the difference between something spontaneous and something rehearsed up. But then you can go and listen to lots of jazz musicians and think, that's the solo they always play. But, jazz is about spontaneity and improvisation, isn't it? This syllabus gives you the opportunity for that, and as well as 3 pieces with improvising in them, you've also got to do a bit of a quick study, which might be sight reading or might be by ear with improvising. And then part of the oral tests is responding and improvising as well. So for me, one of the good things about the ABRSM jazz syllabus compared to other syllabuses that I don't know very much about is that you can't get through it without doing some improvising and using your ears, which is, the basis of everything, isn't it? So like I say, it goes from grade 1 to grade 5. And, people will come to me and say, well, I can play the piano, but I can't play jazz. I can't play jazz. I mean, I can't improvise. I can't do that. What do you do? What do you do when you improvise? How do you know what to play? And if you like, one of the easy things that this ABRSM jazz syllabus does is say, here's your solo, here's what you're playing over, use these notes to start with. Just use these notes. There might be 3 notes. Grade 1, it'll say use these 3 notes, play around with them, use more if you like. But if you only use those 3 notes, that's going to give you a start, and these 3 notes are going to work. And that's the kind of thing that reassures people. I remember when I was first, I was in that situation when I was 18. I could read anything, but I couldn't improvise. And then I understood suddenly what the Dorian mode was, and I thought, oh right, now I can play jazz. That's all I needed. I just needed someone to show me the Dorian mode, and that was it. There it was. So I kind of just want to show you, a little something. So if I take you across the room in an exciting way, just demonstrate what I'm on about. So say, and I'm demonstrating on the piano because I'm a piano. I mean, Yanni did notice I've got a trombone in my room, but I couldn't claim to be a trombonist at all. What I like is these arrangements. There are arrangements done by people like, I don't know if you know these people in South Africa, Nicky Isles, Liam Noble, Hugh Warren, and then older people like Eddie Harvey or Brian Priestley. They're really neat arrangements. This one's Bedford Square Blues. Then you've got a solo. That's 4 notes already. So you've got, you're given something really simple in the left hand,
Yeah.
something really simple in the right hand. That's grade 1. I've given myself a distinction for that already. But there you are. For the horns, so for the piano, you've just got to play on your own. You've got to play solo. It's, like going into an exam and just playing on your own. For the horns, the flute, the clarinet, the various brass instruments, you can have a piano accompaniment, you can have a CD accompaniment. As again, the resources are great. So each, if you buy yourself a grade 3 book, you get a CD with it, and there's the backings played by top British jazz musicians, but really supportive, funky or swinging tracks to play along with. That you can't go wrong with those tracks, basically. If you go to grade, I'll get on to grade 4 and 5, but on the piano side, now the other bonus, if you're interested in ABRSM exams, is that if you pass grade 5 jazz piano, that qualifies you to go on and do grade 6, 7, and 8 straight exams rather than having to pass grade 5 theory. And obviously that is something that some people like. Some people prefer that idea. Now there's all sorts of styles. I mean, specifically, there are some South African tunes. There's quite a few Abdullah Ibrahim tunes, particularly in the horn syllabus. There's a couple of Dudu Bukwana tunes, a Becky Umsaleko tune somewhere. So, there are, as well as, classics. Obviously, it all depends on what you can get licensed, whether you can license a bit of Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie, Thelonious Monk, but there are arrangements of tunes like that. I'm just trying to see what's grade 5. Grade 5. You can, and it's divided into blues, standards, and contemporary. So you've got those 3, if you like, list A, list B, list C, blues, standards, and contemporary. How about this one? That's a bit mellow, isn't it? This one's a Latin style one. This is grade 5, Mambo Country. And then and so on. That's my grade 5 demonstration. I mustn't go on too long though, but for the horns, once you get past grades 1 and 2 and 3, you get a separate book. But for grade 4 and grade 5, this is the book you need.
So the ABRSM.
The ABRSM jazz real book. And obviously this is a concert C treble clef. You can get a bass clef, and you can get a B flat version and an E flat version. So all the tunes for grades 4 and 5 are in here. I should have counted them up. How many tunes? If only it told me. It looks like a lot of tunes on the index to me.
There's a lot.
Yeah, there's 200 pages. So there must be certainly 150 tunes in that book. And again, some of them are original, specially commissioned pieces. Some of them are, Bess's Blues, John Coltrane, or Jobim, or Jimmy Giuffre, or Thelonious Monk. There you are, Homeboys, Becky Umsaleko. So there are all styles. I mean, I sometimes think you could get through an ABRSM jazz exam just really focusing on playing a blues tune, or you could play in a trad jazz style. If you want to play some Jelly Roll Morton or some Keith Nichols trad style, you can get a long way just focusing on that style. So it's covering every style.
Pete, if I may interject. Please. So you've talked about graded syllabus for both the piano and saxophones, and our school actually uses the syllabus and it works very well. But maybe you can give some insight into the accessibility, because remember, ABRSM comes from a very classical background, and a lot of students and a lot of schools are still very much entrenched in a classical jazz, or classical rather music education basis. And they find it extremely difficult to transition from classical to jazz. So what I found is that your syllabus, the ABRSM, makes it accessible, and largely due to the arrangements being simple. So Nicky Isles, I mean, I've seen the arrangements, and it works for students who want to cross over or who want to explore jazz, but may feel a little bit intimidated with this unknown jazz improvisation that we know from jazz as a, a form of music. So can you elaborate on that? Was that deliberately done, or did you do that because you were obviously involved in the syllabus?
Is it? I'm not sure what you mean. Was it deliberately done to, I mean, the arrangements are meant to be really, obviously, the arrangements are meant to be really engaging, whether it's piano arrangements for you to play or whether it's the backing tracks that are so supportive and so well put together. I mean, this is the thing, isn't it? If you've learned classically and you've learned from a basis of always reading music, then the idea that not only you're going to read music, but you're going to improvise something can be quite intimidating, can't it? So partly, you need teachers, don't you? I don't know if the idea that these lead to exams is attractive or not. Exams are a good way of motivating yourself, possibly, to get onto another level.
Well, I think what's motivating about it is because it's graded, and because our school, specifically our school system, is a graded system. So for students to go to the next level, doing music as a subject, they need to pass grades. So I think that makes it very, accessible and user-friendly for teachers.
I suppose my point would be, my thought would be that if you're a confident classical teacher, there's no reason why you wouldn't be a confident teacher of this material as well, because
correct, 100%.
You start at grade one, and the arrangements are really straightforwardly put together, and it's guiding you through it, saying just 100%. Use these notes. Don't go beyond. Don't stress too much. Use an A, B, and a C, and there you are. You've got the basis of a solo already.
So I'm going to ask you one more question, and then I'm going to go on to Billy. So how can teachers or students access this? Because I know also that what you didn't mention, and what we found, is that on YouTube, students can find recorded videos of most of these pieces as reference. So some student has played it, some teachers played it. So they can go onto YouTube and actually watch a tutorial on these pieces that are available in the ABRSM syllabus for piano, for any instrument actually. And I've Googled, and it's there, it exists. So how can teachers get access to this? Well,
obviously the best way is to go through abrsm.org. Yes. There's a publishing department, there's a shop for all the publications. Obviously, I mean, I've no idea what the markup is to buy them in England as compared to buying them and getting them shipped to South Africa.
Expensive.
Expensive, thank you. There you go. But also, obviously, there are representatives of the ABRSM in South Africa, particularly Bridget Harrison, who I worked with when I was over there. And she is the best person to contact. Now, I don't know if we can put her details up on the screen or what the best link is, but I'll see about that over the next half an hour and make sure we can share Bridget's details.
Thanks, Pete.
Bridget is the person in South Africa for ABRSM and particularly for jazz. I was, when I came to South Africa, I was really looking forward to it because I've been inspired by so much South African jazz music and all the South African musicians who came to London in the 60s and stayed around. And that has been such a creative influence on British jazz over the last 60 years. So, that's also the perspective I come from.
Okay, so we're going to make that available by the end of this webinar, but I'm going to move on to one such fabulous South African musician who has taken it upon himself to actually create a resource for musicians and for students to learn music that he's grown up with and that he has become synonymous with. So it gives me great pleasure to invite into this webinar Billy Monama. And Billy is a South African guitarist, author, composer, arranger, producer, and educator, founder and managing director of Grassroots Project. In 1997, Monama began his journey with the guitar, inspired by the music of his childhood, which combined traditional ethnic sounds, African, gospel, and jazz. A sought-after guitarist, Munama has worked with artists including Themba Mkhize, Abdullah Ibrahim, Adile Yanana, Sibongile Khumalo, Victor Ntoni, and there's a host of other artists that you've worked with, Billy. In 2016, Billy and Andy Innes released their album Brothers, a collection of original pieces written and arranged for the acoustic guitar in traditional styles. In 2017, October, he released his debut album Rebounds. And in 2020, Billy released tutorial videos, a documentation of South African guitar styles. And in 2022, which is why you're here today, Munama published the first tutorial book, The Introduction to South African Guitar Styles, Volume 1. And this is 5 decades of Okuvamba. Now, I would love to hear about this myself personally, because we as music educators have been looking for a resource for jazz guitar, and specifically South African jazz guitar. So Billy, won't you please tell us about what you've done and a little bit about yourself?
Good afternoon, Natalie. Thank you so much. And my fellow panelists and the viewers from YouTube, online, everywhere you are. My name is Billy Munama, as you have introduced. I'm driven by history from a very young age. And when I'm not a scholar, I don't have a degree or diploma, or I dropped out of school because I was conscientized, seeing that the curriculum that I was studying, it's not speaking my language, it's not speaking my homage, it's not speaking my heritage, it's not speaking my culture. And I questioned a lot of things on the history class, that why am I reading about ragtime, Dixieland, Boogie Woogie? What about Blues Botanga? What about Mpaqanga? What about Maskanda? I read a 2-page about B.B. King, but there was no 1 page about General Duze. Then that's when I said, no, man, But even though I dropped my studies, I continued to research. My search started then, because when my history teacher gave me the assignment to go and research about Maskanda guitar, I went to all the libraries in South Africa. I went on the internet. I mean, at that time, there was no much on the internet at all. Nothing. There was no source of point, source of a reference from a South African guitar. And that's when I took an initiative to research in depth, to understand the guitar players who contributed in the South African music landscape. But I didn't want to make it a Salt kind of a tutorial book whereby it's going to be a repertoire, a song list of those tunes. I wanted someone, when a student read that music, they have an understanding of a history. So now in this book, there's this book is an introduction to South African guitar styles, volume 1. The reason I'm saying is introduction, because I'm introducing these people. So now I'm speaking about a documentation of guitar players who were born in 1924. General Duze was born in 1924. I'm speaking about Enoch Tabete, who was born in 1924. That is a set of group of African jazz. That is the first segment of African jazz, the acoustic era. And then I speak about the development, in the book, I speak about the development of the jazz guitar. General Duze, when then now the jazz guitar, the rhythm is introduced. We talk about the development of the jazz guitar. We talk about the age group of the musicians who were born in 1930s. The Johnny Foree, Alan Kwela, all those guitar players, Malombo, Philip Tabani. Those people now, we speak about the guitar, the jazz guitar, post-1960s, post-Black consciousness. So now we speak about Okuvampa, post 1960s. And then we're going to get into 1970s, whereby now the music changed the landscape to Umbaqanga. And then we speak about the Max Mangwane, the Vivian Gubani. And then in the 1980s, there's another generation that stops there at Umbaqanga. And then volume 2, then we'll speak from how Umbaqanga has influenced other styles like bubblegum, Afropop, until millennium. But let me take you back a little bit. History, it is very important, because when you read a book, you have consciousness of what repertoire you are playing. I do want to separate the scores and the book, and also they say there are biographies. Those biographies, there are photos, there are images, there are images of those personnels, so that you can put the music to the photo to have an idea. Who is this person? I mean, all of us here, we know how John Coltrane looks like, right? We know how Charlie Parker looks like, because we have the point of reference of a photo. At the end of each and every chapter, there is a discography. There's a link to SoundCloud. At the SoundCloud, on my SoundCloud, there's a chapter 1. On chapter 1, there's a Maskanda. So now on Maskanda, you will have all the audio tracks from the score. So if there is the Maskanda intro by Pussy Shugela, it will say Maskanda Pussy Shugela, and then you press the audio there, it guides you. So you're looking at the score, and then you're looking at you can listen to the audio. Because remember, my writing of this book, it is not only for the scholars. Because now, what if do you know how many musicians are professional musicians who never went to school, but they have a good ear? And then I made also a video. So now there are tutorial videos as well. So now if you can't get that thing in reading, if you don't know how to read music, you can go on the website and then you subscribe for the tutorials video, whereby we take you step by step of how to play this thing. So it's vast and comprehensive. It's not only about jazz music, but about a guitar as a whole. Actually, this year, guitar marks 100 years of centenary, because the research, it proves that the guitar, it was recorded in 1922. So I'm not saying the guitar arrived in South Africa in 1922. No, I'm saying the recordings, according to the recording industry. That's what we're here to celebrate 100 years of centenary. So it's a vast repertoire, and there's still another music, Kwela. Remember, the early guitar players, those side of just guitarists I mentioned, Stanford Zimu, Almond Memela, General Duze, all those guys, Enoch Tabete, all those people, they were backing guitar players. So there's no way you're gonna find a recording with their solo project. So the guitar players who started recording their solo projects, they came when? They came in the 1950s. So now the first black to record a guitar was Willie Kumeki. Who recorded a guitar, but he recorded as a backing guitar player. So now I had to go and look for the musicians that they used to play for. For example, then I will take a tune for Miriam Makeba, and then I will take the part of the guitar, the rhythm guitar player, of the African. That is why the African jazz. That's why the African jazz, I broke it in 3 segments. The first African jazz, it was acoustic era, and then the other one, it was the introduction of the beginning of electric guitar, and then the third one, it was the guitar post 1960s.
So, Billy, if I may ask, you mentioned, and I've also done these searches, there really isn't information available on Maskandi jazz guitarists or guitarists in general. So your information, especially in regards to the history of these musicians, how did you acquire this? How did you get this information? Was it through interviews? Was it through researching music? So just walk us through that a little bit.
I wanna hear your question again so that I can answer in depth. You say that there's already what about Maskanda?
I said there is not information.
Okay.
There's not a lot, right? So I think there's only two resources that I've seen. One is Christopher Ballantyne's Marabi Nights and David Copland in Township Tonight. Those are the major resources that I know that trace South African music. So in your in the history aspect of your book that you are launching, how did you get this information? How did you acquire this information?
Research. I researched in my own capacity. When I started writing, I went to meet Gwen Ansel. Gwen Ansel mentored me, and then I said, "This is Gwen, I want to write a book about guitar." And then Gwen was like, "Where are you gonna start?" And then at that time, I had a little piece of paper, on my manuscript, and then he said to me, "Billy, you need to do a thorough research." I went to KwaZulu-Natal. I was in Nanda. I lived with the people who play Maskanda. I visited a professor. Oh Jesus Christ! His name is gone, but is at UKZN. I researched. I did interviews. I read so many books. I went to visit number of times David Copland. I asked him about this Maskanda. What is Maskanda? Because I read his books. I read so many books, man. And I can tell you today, they were angels. There were angels that I got to meet while I was in the process of writing. And they opened my eye, and his name, Chris Ballantyne. Chris Ballantyne, then he gave me discographies. Then I started writing from a perception of not just being a researcher from reading books, but writing from a perception of understanding the music, the language, the interpretation. So now that is why in the book there are techniques of this kind of style, because I've identified the leaks, what you call, guys, the leaks, the cliches that they will use. And then another one was Simon Allen. I had interviews with Simon Allen. I read their blogs. So I did a research. From the ground, interviewing the practitioners and interviewing the scholars like the Professor Dave Copland, and also reading all sort of materials.
Yes. Well, so you provided. I know this.
Yeah. So same as other chapters. And Mpaqanga, for example, I was privileged because I went to the sources, the people, the innovators who innovated Joseph Makwela, the first electric bass player in South Africa. Joseph Makwela was playing with Mahlathini and Motela Queens. I mean, this guy is giving me so much depth. And then I went to Mommy Hilda Kubatla of Motela Queens. I went to Lucky Munama, who was the drummer of Motela Queens. You know what I'm saying? So the information was coming from people from the ground, and also reading and also engaging professors, as if like I was writing a dissertation, but no one sent me to do that. It was in my own accord.
Well, you never know. You could be writing a dissertation in no time, because the information that you've made available right now is precisely that. So, I am really looking forward to reading your book and to actually getting my hands on that for both myself and for my students. So I'm going to move on, Billy, and we'll come back to you, because I'm sure there's going to be lots of questions based on your research and the book that's coming up. But you mentioned one phrase that you mentioned is you came across these angels. And I must say that the gentleman that I'm going to introduce to our viewers next are certainly angels to the music industry in South Africa in so many ways. And I have great respect for them. And Billy, so I'm going to introduce them in this way, and it's to give you some hope. So you mentioned that a lot of in your schooling, when you were learning history, nobody was speaking about Maskanda, nobody was speaking about Makanga, nobody was speaking about Istatamia, because that was kept out of the music syllabus. So something that I'm not sure if you or the viewers knew, that included in the public school syllabus, so that's NFC, and it's called the CAP syllabus right now. So music students from grade 10 to 12 learn about South African music. They learn right from Marabi to Feafaku. They learn all the way through. So our matric syllabus, and I was saying that to Neil earlier today, our matric syllabus is 100% South African jazz. So we go through Zumngawana, we go through Mashatela Queens, we're learning about Abdullah Ibrahim. So our students right now at a matric level are learning South African music. And what's inspiring about that is because they're introduced to this music at that young age, they now understand that it exists. They don't go into university and then only learn about it there after you've learned about New Orleans and jazz and swing and bebop. They learn it before. So they have this choice to actually explore their own music, and a lot of them are exploring that. And the Induduzo Makatinis who are making inroads in so many international spaces, they're now becoming these living mentors that our students have access to. So your resource that you made available, remember that you're going to be starting a trend in not just schools, but with musicians, because the resource is something that is accessible to them that you may not have had access to, but you're an answer to many, many people that will come after this. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our next panelist, and that's George Werner and Yanni van Tonder. I should be calling you Yanni van Tonder and George, but I'm going to call you by your names as the moderator of this webinar. So let me introduce you in the right way. Yanni van Tonder is probably better known for his contribution to Afrikaans rock revolution of the 90s, the late 1980s, as part of Johannes Korrel's notorious Gereformeerde blues band. However, by then, he'd already spent 2 years on the road playing Marabi with Ntembi Piliso's African jazz pioneers, and that's a big wow. The common thread between these projects was the importance of being yourself and projecting your own identity to the world. This led to him starting the Hanepoort Big Band in Cape Town in 2001, the only such band playing strictly South African repertoire, about half and half originals and his arrangements of South African jazz tunes. And transcribing all these tunes for the band gave rise to the idea for, drumroll, the South African Real Book. And I'm going to stop on that bio there and introduce George Werner. George Werner studied music under Merton Barrow at Cape Town Jazz Workshop in the early 1980s, before becoming a professional musician in 1983, performing with numerous bands on the casino hotel circuit in Southern Africa and in musical theater. He has performed and recorded with the likes of Winston Mankunku, Robbie Jansen, Duke and Ezra Kana, Errol and Alvin Dyer, Satima B. Benjamin, Sylvia Nduyelwa, Tandy Klassen, and Don Chomela. Internationally, he has performed in Germany, France, Japan, USA, Bahrain, and Brazil. And I'm going to leave those bios there because I really, really want you both to talk about what has become my jazz effect of 2022, which is the South African Jazz Real Book. And if the viewers don't know what I'm talking about, my hope is by the end of this webinar, you're going to be knocking their doors down to get a copy of this in your hands, because it literally is the new Bible for jazz education. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to George Werner and Yanni van Tonder, who's going to speak about this amazing jazz effect to you. I don't know where they're gone. I think we've kind of lost them. So while we're trying to get them back, let me just tell you about this. I have it. Let me walk to get it for you, then you know what I'm talking about. So And if you can see that. So this is the South African Jazz Real Book. Wing, 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 wing. And that's what we're talking about. So what they've basically done is they've transcribed a whole bunch of South African jazz tunes and made this available, much like the real books are available to people worldwide. So, you know, we have the Jazz Real Books, and I know that this is going to become the real book that everybody is going to want. Oh, you're back. Welcome back. Was my introduction so mind-blowing that you went offline?
Your drum roll.
It was my drum roll. Well, welcome back. I've done a show and tell of what the book looks like. So won't you please introduce yourselves and tell us about this amazing jazz effect?
Okay, you start.
Well, you know, George and I, like you say, you can call us we grew up in the days when there wasn't much jazz education in South Africa. So if you got hold of a real book, you know, that was gold. So, I mean, we both remember the first time we laid eyes on a real book. I remember I was living in Yeoville and my neighbor was Becky Kosa, the guitar player, and he got hold of a real book, an old scruffy one, and I actually borrowed it from him and copied it page for page down at the local photocopy shop. And I just remember what that resource meant to us, because there wasn't, much education. So George and I, we met in Cape Town here at Merton Barrow's jazz workshop, teaching there. That's also where I started my big band. Around about the same time, George started the Little Giants. And like you said, my big band, we played only South African music. And George was doing arrangements of South African tunes for these youngsters. And so we'd already started transcribing stuff independently, and we both had this idea of a book. Then we met a guy called Colin Miller, and Colin had a musicology project researching Cape Jazz. And he'd actually got a couple of tunes from McCoy Mrubata and Paul Hanmer for his project. So at some point, they both joined my big band, and we realized we all had this idea. So we first started with Colin. We worked on, we released something called the Cape Jazz Collection, which was just a small collection of Cape songs, also in lead sheet format. And that was in, I think, 2005. And then we actually, at the time, we started working already on we had this idea of, the South African real book. And then, life got complicated. Colin moved to the US, I moved out to the Karoo, and we dropped the project. Nothing happened. And then for years, every time I'd run into George, because we still played music together, we would nag each other about this book, And about 2 years ago, or about a year ago, we had various funding proposals. And about a year ago, we finally, one of our proposals succeeded. And so we decided to get down and do the book. The interesting thing is that in that sort of 10-year period when we weren't working on it, there was always a lot of talk from government, academic institutions, we always heard about the real book coming out, but nothing ever happened. So we were just very pleased to actually finally get to do this thing that we'd always wanted to do, and that we felt, would fill a massive hole in jazz education and provide this resource that we wish we could have grown up with.
Yeah. So, George, if I may, can you tell us a little bit about the Little Giants? Did they have any bearing or in actually producing a book like this? Because I know that's been your project and something that's really been close to your heart.
Yeah. Well, I started, to be honest, I didn't ever want to teach.
None of us did.
And music was not going to be an option for me. I started playing music at high school, and I got paid 20 cents a gig, and I couldn't raise a family with that. But somehow or other, the universe pushed me back into music, and around about 88, I started teaching in the jazz workshop. And then soon after that, Duke Mukana had a project called MAP, Musical Action for People's Progress, which was a kind of a bridging program for kids coming out of the townships who didn't have music education, to get them like a bridging program to get to UCT and other. And but then I'd been playing with people like Mankunku and Ezra, and I was very fortunate to have met him because I didn't have access to that music, and now suddenly I'm playing with the creators of this music, and they steered me also to listen to other people that I didn't know of, because the audio wasn't there. You don't have it on the radio, TV didn't. It was only Western music that you really get on that time, Springbok radio, and when I got to MAP, and this was after I already had played with and still playing with Ezra and Mankunku, and now I had the shall I say, the resources to transcribe the stuff for my students at MAP. So already and that was in the early 90s, and then in the late 90s, one of the festivals in Cape Town actually asked Ezra and myself to start a township band, just for the millennium, the 2000 millennium, the festival. And that's when I started the Little Giants with Ezra. And again, we had to, every year the repertoire changes, because we can't teach them the same stuff. They would get quite bored. But it was, for me, it was the stuff that was being played at that moment. It's a kind of outcomes-based education. We're going to have this stuff that is been written 200 years ago. Nothing wrong with that. I love Bach, Beethoven, and those guys. But the stuff that was happening at that moment, for me, was very important to get the kids
Please.
and that's what was always driving me. How do I get the kids interested? And you want them back next week, and the week thereafter, next year, and the year thereafter. So it had to be. And fortunately enough, we have quite vibrant music. Our own music is very vibrant. It's very the kids actually enjoy learning South African music. The only problem is they don't have access.
Yes.
So that is actually the reason why transcribing this book was so important. And it's not just for the kids, it was for the teachers. I can recall first going to the Baxter Big Band Festival in 2002 with the Little Giants, and we were the only band performing South African repertoire. And slowly I could hear. And the same thing happened also at the Grahamstown Festival, also 2002, the only band playing South African music. And every year when we returned to these festivals, we would slowly hear other school bands and things like that introducing the music. And I was telling Yanni yesterday, it's actually quite weird that the organizers of the Baxter sent me a mail a couple of days, sent us all a mail a couple of days ago, requesting that it's Africa Month, please can you guys perform at least one South African tune. I told Yanni, this year is going to be the first year we're not going to play South African tune.
But I know So if I may, I know, George, that you, I don't know if Yanni is, but I've seen you on the Little Giants on the lineup for the Makanda Jazz Festival coming up in June.
Yeah.
So which leads me to my next question for all of you, because I've been hinting at this. Where can teachers and students or anybody interested in getting this resource, how can they get their hands on it? I saw Pete's eyes light up when he heard about this as a resource as well. So you never know where this could lead to, because it literally is transcribing South African jazz tunes in a lead sheet form for anybody to have access to this music. And of course, these are not just musicians that have passed. A lot of these musicians are still around with us. And I've not coined a phrase, but I call those living mentors. Students can watch them, students can go to their gigs, they've got the access to their music, they know how to play it, they've got lead sheets now. So where can students get this? Where can people get their hands on the South African Jazz Real Book?
The easiest is we've got a little website, sheetmusic.co.za, where you can place an online order. And in South Africa, we deliver with Postnet. Otherwise, if you email nick@jazz.co.za, it's our partner who handles the distribution. He will post it anywhere in the world. There's also PayPal and PayFast on the sheetmusic.co.za website.
So I know this from personal experience that the sheetmusic.co.za also you've done other publications before this, and one of that was just specifically on Cape Town jazz, and you've published a couple of arrangements.
We've got a couple of big band arrangements. Sorry, we have a couple of big band arrangements, but it's mostly about, this Real Book is by far the most important thing that we've done.
Yes. But I think, sheetmusic.co.za, for anybody who is interested in it, for me as a jazz educator, because I'm in schools, you need anything, you need everything and anything, because when you start a band, the Real Book helps you, but the arrangements also help you, especially for somebody who's not had experience with playing music in a band or having a band together in schools. And getting children to play together is by far the best way to get them interested in jazz and in South African jazz, not just, for listening to it. So Billy, if I may direct that to you, how can our viewers get access or gain access to your jazz guitar book?
Yes, but I wanna, correct something. This book is not only jazz. In this context, it is big jazz, but this is vast, because we as people, I remember back in the day, Shannon Mode, I had a conversation with Shannon. Shannon, he was like, Billy, you see me, I'm white. I don't have any other cultures. You are black. You are so diverse. Why then don't you use your diversity as a musician? So that is why I brought diversity into this book. So there's jazz, there's Maskanda, there's Mpaqanga, there's and I know we had this conversation all the time when I speak about other music with jazz musicians, connoisseurs. They always sniff around and do all that thing, but they will come back to this as a point of reference. But my book is available now via a website, www.realafricanpublishers.com. So it's like www.realafricanpublishers.com. You'll find Angela McLand, the copy before the launch. So the launch is going to be in September. So now, so before the launch, the copy is 450. After the launch, the copy is 500, and then it's going to be available also. So this is a special. We're going to be posting. We're going to be delivering the books via Postnet. Before the launch, come and sign them. for everyone, and then we post them via Postnet for 450. This is a special, and then after the launch, you pay 500. And you know, and then add exclusive books as well. They're gonna be available at 525 rand.
So we should just get it now. So Pete,
yes,
you've given us the link to the ABRSM. I must tell you that I didn't know about Bridget when I bought the AB Real books, both for alto and tenor saxophone. So it took quite a while to get to my school. So I was very happy when we eventually got it, but we will absolutely use Bridget as a point of contact to get our hands onto the AB Real books, because I know, so all three of you, well, all four of you, I'm looking at 3 screens in front of me. I don't know if you know how invaluable your resources are for not just jazz education, but for music education. So I apologize for the classification of jazz, but believe this is Jazz Appreciation Month, so jazz is on my brain. So accept my humble apologies. But if I may, you know, I know that one of the major, I think, investments in jazz education has been the Makhanda Jazz Festival. So my encouragement to you is get your resources that we've spoken about to that festival, because the students at that festival and the teachers at that festival have made concerted efforts at advancing jazz education and music education and South African music education in their spaces. And it's very encouraging to know that South African music has been embraced by our South African schools and universities. And I think in 10 years' time, you'll see a very different view of music education in general. You'll see the sound starting to change and becoming more of a hybrid South African sound, and changing from what we've seen it over the years. I'll open the floor to either of you to close. Any closing statements? Would you like to say anything? You don't have to, Buddy, just unmute yourself.
I just want to say how pleased I am with what you said about the South African music being available in the school syllabus.
Oh, absolutely.
I can't tell you how amazing that is.
Well, we know Johannes Kerkorro. My students have listened to Johannes Kerkorro all the way through. And, you know, it's amazing because Feya went to the university that I was in, which was Natal University. So when I teach Feya Faku, I say, this is the person that I studied music with. And my students' eyes just light up because, you know, they're not just learning about him, but it's firsthand information now because we have contact with them. So absolutely, I
Yes.
definitely agree with that. Billy, you wanted to say something?
I wanna commend everyone, George and Peter, and you know, Van Donder, for your great contribution, because when I started, there was nothing, you know, but today there's something, you know. So we are, I think we're heading in the right direction, you know, because I mean, when I started 15 years ago, there was nothing, but today there's something, and you know, I want to give you guys some kudos there.
Well, and the same goes to you, Buddy, and you've got congratulations from Dr. Puti Sepuru, who said the same thing to you. So well done for that. But thank you, everybody, for being here, to all the panelists for taking time out to be with us and for sharing on your jazzy fact and what you've brought to music education in South Africa and the world. It's not just South Africa. I know that this will absolutely touch the rest of the world when they look for resources on South African jazz education and music education. So thank you so much for being with us. And we wish you a fantastic Jazz Appreciation Month ahead. We've got a couple of days left. So we hope that you enjoy that. Thank you very much. And thank you to all the viewers
for
joining us for this afternoon. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.